the plantar fascia is the most superficial layer, closest to the surface layer of structural support for your arches. The skin and the fat don't really provide, they provide cushioning and protection, but not structural support, right? So that's the most superficial layer. When you look at this view, you see there's a considerable amount of space in between the bony structures of the foot and the plantar fascia. What is that space filled in with? It's filled in with 4 layers of muscle. Okay. But people ask about plantar fasciitis, they ask about, heel spurs, things like that. And the analogy I often use is this. If you've ever been in a work environment where you had a job to do and you had coworkers who also had their job to do, and your coworkers were kind of slackers, and you end up doing their job for them, I think a lot of people can relate to that at one point or another in their lives. How do you feel? Do you feel happy about doing the job of your coworkers? You feel resentful, and you probably get a little inflamed over time. And then, because we can't be inflamed all the time, we eventually just harden to the situation and calcify. This is what happens to the foot when the coworkers, meaning the muscular layer of support, starts slacking off. And then all of the job of keeping the structure from collapsing falls to the plantar fascia. It gets inflamed, it gets aggravated, it gets resentful. And you have what's called plantar fasciitis, which is an inflammation of the plantar fascia. Now, the calcification thing happens over time when the constant tugging of this fascia, okay, here, where it attaches to the calcaneal tuberosity, will eventually actually pull the periosteum, which is the sheath, the covering of the bone. That's where things attach. But when you say something attaches to a bone, it's actually to the sheath of the bone that the thing is attaching, right? So it starts pulling that sheath, tugging that sheath away from the bone. Let's say the original contour of the bone is here, and it starts tugging at it. Well, the body does not tolerate empty space very well. So that separation of the periosteum from the calcaneal tuberosity gets backfilled with calcium. And that's a heel spur. So a heel spur is sort of the end product of chronic plantar fasciitis, which in turn is a result of simply weak arches, weak arch support. I had a woman in a class, a workshop I was teaching, weekend workshop, an out-of-town workshop, who was an athlete, a runner. And she didn't say this beforehand. We were doing the Warrior Series, which we'll be learning as part of this trimester. And after about, 40 minutes of practicing this Warrior Series, she said, I've had chronic plantar fasciitis, foot pain, for years, and it's gone. I mean, that was a shocking, dramatic result. But just because of the way we had awakened her arch muscles, by the way we had placed her feet and done that Warrior Series, all of a sudden they fired up, they started supporting her arch, and it took that strain out of the plantar fascia, and her foot pain was very surprisingly, very quickly gone, just from waking it up. So these things can change, and sometimes rather dramatically, when we get the foot healthier.